The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the small town of Maplewood. Leaves rustled gently in the fading light, their whispers mingling with the distant laughter of children playing in the park. Sarah stood at the window of her modest home, the weight of the world resting heavily on her shoulders. "Mom!" a voice called from the living room, breaking her reverie. It was Amani, the oldest of her 3 children. At 10 years old, she had inherited the best of both her parents, her father's sharp wit and her mother's gentle heart. "Yes, sweetheart?" Sarah turned to face her children, her smile brightening the room. "Can we have ice cream for dinner?" Amani's eyes sparkled with mischief, her curly hair bouncing as she bounced on her heels. "Mom, please!" chimed in Malik, the middle child, a charming smile revealing the gap where a tooth used to be. "I'll even do my homework right after." Yeah, homework first." Kira, the youngest, joined in, her tiny fingers clutching a stuffed bear. "I want chocolate, please, Mom." Sarah chuckled, her heart swelling with love. "All right, ice cream it is, but only if you finish your homework first." "Yay!" the trio cheered, their voices harmonizing in a symphony of joy. As the children scampered off to their homework, Sarah's laughter faded into a sigh. There was a bittersweet melody to the joy of her children, a reminder of what once was and what could have been. When she had given birth to the triplets, Mike had promised to be there for them, to embrace the unique beauty they brought into the world. But promises can be as fragile as glass. 3 years earlier, the hospital room was a whirlwind of emotions, excitement, fear, and disbelief. Sarah lay in the bed, sweat glistening on her forehead, while Mike paced nervously in the corner, his hands shoved deep into his pockets. "Stay with me, Mike!" Sarah gasped, a contraction gripping her body. "They're coming! All 3 of them!" I'm here!" he said, rushing to her side. His eyes were wide, a mix of wonder and anxiety. "You're doing great, babe. Just breathe." With a final push, the first cry filled the room, followed by 2 more. Sarah's heart soared. "Look at them! They're perfect!" "Yeah," Mike replied, his voice strained. "Perfect." As the nurses placed the squirming bundles in Sarah's arms, Amani, Malik, and Kira, she saw her husband's expression shift. A shadow crossed his face, and for a moment, she couldn't tell what it was. "Mike?" she asked, worry creeping into her tone. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," he replied too quickly, avoiding her gaze. "It's just, they're different." "Different?" Sarah's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "They're black, Sarah. This is not what I expected." Her heart raced in confusion and hurt. "They're our children, Mike. They're beautiful." But Mike's eyes were distant, filled with a growing fear that Sarah couldn't understand. "I just don't know if I can handle this. What will people think?" Frustration bubbled within her. "What do you mean? They're our children. They'll be loved. That's what matters." Days turned into weeks, and the joy of new motherhood quickly turned into a battleground. Mike's support dwindled. He became distant, often missing family dinners, choosing instead to drown himself in work and avoidance. One night, after a particularly difficult day, Sarah confronted him. "You can't keep running away, Mike. They need you." "I can't do this, Sarah," he shouted, his voice echoing through the house. "I can't face the world with them." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "They are our children, Mike. You can't just leave us." But leave he did. Just as the kids were starting to crawl, Mike packed a bag and walked out the door, leaving Sarah alone with her triplets and the crushing weight of abandonment. Present day. "Mom, I finished!" Amani's voice cut through her thoughts, bringing Sarah back to the present. "Great job, Amani. You can pick the first flavor," Sarah replied, her heart lightening momentarily. "Chocolate," Amani declared, raising her hands in triumph. Kira followed suit. "Chocolate, chocolate." Malik rolled his eyes playfully. "Fine, but I'm picking the next flavor." As Sarah gathered the bowls and scoops, a knock echoed through the house. It was a sound unfamiliar, a sound that sent a ripple of anxiety through her. She glanced at the kids, who were blissfully unaware of the tension brewing in the air. "Who is it, Mom?" Malik asked, sensing her hesitation. I I don't know. Stay here, she instructed, her heart pounding. She opened the door slowly, her breath hitching as she took in the figure standing before her. Mike? She gasped, disbelief flooding her voice. The man she once knew had changed. His hair was graying, and lines etched deep around his eyes, but the shock in his gaze mirrored her own. Sarah. His voice was low, laced with uncertainty. I came to see the kids. After all this time? She spat, anger flaring. You left us. You chose to abandon us. I know, he said, his voice thick with regret. But I've changed. I want to be a part of their lives. Sarah's heart twisted. You think you can just waltz in here after years of silence? They don't even know you. Let me talk to them, he pleaded, desperation creeping into his tone. She hesitated, torn between the desire to protect her children and the flicker of hope that perhaps he had truly changed. Wait here. As she walked back into the living room, the sound of laughter filled the air. She felt a surge of warmth watching her children, their innocence untouched by the scars of the past. Kids, she began, her voice faltering. Your father is here. Dad? Amani's eyes widened, her excitement evident, while Malik frowned in confusion and Kira clutched her bear tightly. Yeah, he's here, Sarah said, her heart racing. He wants to see you. Really? Amani bounced on her toes, her enthusiasm palpable. Can I give him a hug? Sarah's breath caught in her throat. Amani, he hasn't been here in a long time. I don't care, Amani declared, determination shining in her eyes. He's still my dad. With a heavy heart, Sarah nodded. Okay, but let's take it slow. She opened it, revealing Mike, who stood awkwardly, his eyes wide with anticipation. Hey kids, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Dad! Amani rushed forward, wrapping her tiny arms around his waist. Mike stiffened, surprise flashing across his face. Wow, Amani, you've gotten so big. Malik lingered at the back, crossing his arms. You left us. I know, and I'm sorry, Mike replied, his voice tremulous. I've missed so much, and I want to make it right. Do you know my name? Kira piped up, her little voice breaking the tension. Of course I do, Kira, Mike said, kneeling down to her level. You're my little sunshine. Kira blinked, her trust not yet fully formed. You didn't come back, she said quietly. I know, and I wish I could go back and change that, he said, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. But I'm here now, and I want to be part of your lives. Malik stepped forward, his expression skeptical. Why should we believe you? Because I'm willing to try, Mike said, his voice steady. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. As silence enveloped the room, Sarah watched her children, the mixture of hope and caution reflected in their eyes. Can you stay for ice cream? Amani asked, breaking the tension. We're having chocolate. Mike smiled, a faint light igniting in his eyes. I'd love to. As they settled at the kitchen table, Sarah felt an overwhelming mix of emotions. The ice cream melted slowly in their bowls, but the real sweetness lay in the tentative connections forming anew. Tell us about your favorite ice cream, Amani urged, her voice bright with curiosity. I think I'd have to say mint chocolate chip, Mike replied, his eyes sparkling. Reminds me of summers when I was a kid. Ew, that's gross, Malik exclaimed, his nose wrinkling. You're weird, Dad, Sarah chuckled, the tension slowly dissipating. Kids, it's okay to be weird. Yeah, we get it from you, Kira giggled, her laughter infectious. As they continued to share stories, Sarah watched as Mike began to weave himself back into the fabric of their lives. The fear that had once consumed her began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism. Can I show you my drawing? Amani asked, her excitement bubbling over. Absolutely, Mike replied, leaning forward eagerly. In that moment, Sarah realized that the road ahead would be filled with challenges, but perhaps they could navigate them together. As the laughter echoed through the house, a small seed of hope took root. Love, after all, was a tapestry of colors, each thread unique yet bound together by a common purpose. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a gentle glow over Maplewood, signaling the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. The soft clinking of spoons against bowls filled the kitchen as the ice cream began to melt. Yet the warmth that had started to build between them was far from dissolving. The once awkward silence now morphed into a rhythm of tentative laughter and stories. It was as if, in the simple act of sharing ice cream, they had opened a door, however fragile, into something resembling reconciliation. Amani wiped her mouth with the back of her hand, her eyes bright. "Dad, do you remember that time we went to the park and I fell off the swings? You carried me all the way home." Mike hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I remember. You were crying so much, but you were so brave." His voice wavered as he spoke, clearly searching for more fragments of memories that had slipped through the cracks of the years he'd been gone. Malik, ever the skeptic, sat back in his chair, arms crossed. "I don't remember you ever carrying us anywhere," he muttered. Mike met his son's eyes, a flicker of guilt crossing his face. "You're right, Malik. I haven't been here like I should have, but I'm hoping we can make new memories, ones where I'm here for you, for all of you." Sarah watched the exchange closely, her heart tugging between the hurt of the past and the hope for something new. She hadn't expected Mike's return, much less for him to sit at their table, trying to make amends. But here he was, amidst the laughter of their children, and the impossible was unfolding in front of her eyes. A part of her wanted to shield them from future disappointment, but another part longed for this to be the beginning of something better. "Dad, what happened to you? Why did you leave?" Kira's small voice cut through the moment, her innocent question carrying the weight of years of pain. The room went silent. Sarah's breath caught as she glanced at Mike, waiting for his response. It was the question none of them had dared to ask until now. Mike's face tightened, and he set his spoon down. He took a deep breath before speaking, his voice low and raw. "I was scared. I didn't know how to handle things, or how to be the dad you all needed me to be. I let that fear control me, and instead of facing it, I ran. And I regret it every single day." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for a moment, no one spoke. The children were quiet, absorbing the vulnerability in their father's confession. Amani broke the silence first, her soft voice steady. "But you're here now, right?" Mike nodded, his eyes filled with a hope he hadn't dared to feel in years. "Yes, I'm here now. And I'm not going anywhere, I promise." Sarah watched the exchange, feeling a mixture of emotions swirl within her. Promises. They'd been broken before, but there was something different in Mike's voice now. He wasn't the same man who had left them. There was a tiredness, an acceptance of his mistakes that gave his words a weight they hadn't had before. But she had her doubts, her own wounds that time had barely begun to heal. After dinner, as the children retired to their rooms, Sarah and Mike found themselves alone in the kitchen. The air was thick with unspoken words, memories neither could ignore. Sarah busied herself with the dishes, her hands moving mechanically as she tried to gather her thoughts. "Sarah?" Mike's voice broke the silence, soft but firm. "I meant what I said. I'm here to stay. I know I have no right to ask for forgiveness, but I want to be part of their lives. I want to make things right with you." She didn't turn around immediately. The clattering of dishes filled the silence as she struggled to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her voice low and measured. "You don't just get to show up and fix everything, Mike. We've been through so much without you. The kids, they needed you, and you weren't there." Mike's gaze dropped to the floor. "I know, and I'm not expecting it to be easy, but I'm willing to try. I want to prove to you, and to them, that I've changed." Sarah turned off the faucet and dried her hands, finally facing him. "It's going to take more than just words, Mike. The kids are strong, but they've been hurt. You can't just come back and expect everything to be the same." "I don't expect that," he said quietly, "but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. All of you." She studied his face, searching for the man she once loved, the man who had walked out of their lives. The gray in his hair, the lines etched into his face, they spoke of time and regret. But there was something else there now, determination. "One step at a time," Sarah finally said, her voice softer. "If you want to be in their lives, you have to prove it, not just to me, but to them." Mike nodded, his eyes holding hers with a mix of gratitude and something that felt like hope. "I'll prove it. I won't let them down again." As they stood in the quiet kitchen, the echoes of the past lingering around them, Sarah felt a small glimmer of something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Possibility. It was fragile, like a thread of light breaking through the darkness, but it was there. And maybe, just maybe, it would be enough to begin again. The days that followed were slow and tentative. Mike stayed true to his word, visiting regularly, spending time with the kids, helping with homework, playing games, and even cooking meals. At first, Malik kept his distance, watching his father with wary eyes, but slowly, even he began to soften, letting Mike into his world little by little. Amani was the quickest to forgive, eager to make up for lost time, while Kira, in her quiet way, began to trust that her father was here to stay. It wasn't perfect. There were moments of tension, of old wounds reopening, but there were also moments of laughter, of connection, and Sarah couldn't deny that something was changing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft orange glow over Maplewood, Sarah stood by the window, watching Mike play catch with the kids in the yard. Their laughter filled the air, and for the first time in a long time, she felt something close to peace. Maybe, just maybe, the colors of love were shifting once again. And this time, they might just paint something beautiful